Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. If you're new here, well, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth talking about the latest home video releases, some good, some bad, some putrid. And I am going to kick it off this week with one, like, I don't want to start this on a sour note, but this one was really bad.
Oh no.
And that's Deep Impact.
Oh no.
Yeah, I didn't like it. We'll get into that. So here's the back. And I don't think there's anything inside. Yeah, just the discs. Now this does have a digital code that's not in there now, but if you order it, yours will have that. So yeah, I really love a good 90s early aughts disaster movie, and I think like this is pretty well known because it came out probably, I think, at the exact or around the exact same time as Armageddon, and both have kind of similar plots. And I have to say, even though I'm not a huge fan of Armageddon, I think I like that a lot more.
Yeah.
So Deep Impact. So okay, the cover, this would suggest a very fast moving disaster movie that is amazing and epic, but it is very slow. It's at 2 hours, it's just a miserable slog. I found like the characters very shallow. I found it impossible to really connect and engage with anybody. It also does this really weird thing where you have your main characters, then you kind of have like secondary characters, but then less about the secondary characters like Elijah Wood, and I can't remember the other characters.
Lily
And
Sobieski.
yeah, but they're
Yeah.
all, I mean, then the secondary characters kind of become more important to the plot, but you still, less about them, and it's even harder to really like engage and connect with them. So I found it really hard. It's funny, I was watching this with my husband, and like it was getting late, and he's like, I'm gonna bail, I'll let you finish this. So it wasn't just me. And I will say I do appreciate the fact that they were going for something that was a little bit more emotionally driven. There definitely was some impactful moments. And it was the mother of the main character that killed herself, which is, very heavy, and obviously a trigger warning if that stuff affects you, like suicidal ideation. But yeah, it's and the ending is pretty much like what you might think, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it. I don't know, it seemed like you like this more.
I do like it more. I don't think it's a perfect movie by any means. I also think like as much as Michael Bay can be problematic in his own ways, like I think he made a more entertaining movie with Armageddon. But this one, uh, it it's a movie that it's kind of plagued by a lot of different problems. And like I read up on a little bit on like its background. It had a really troubled production history and like test screenings and stuff. Because I apparently audiences didn't really react really well to like the Elijah Wood subplot, so they cut a lot of that out, which I didn't really either. So I kind of understand that. But then there was also like a whole potential love interest for the main Teo Leone character, they completely cut out that character. You get like little snippets of him, like it, like being like,
Oh yeah.
get on the helicopter and stuff, but like they kind of cut that completely out. So it's like this is a really kind of like chopped up movie. But I responded a little bit more to like the emotional stuff, and the pacing worked a little bit better for me. Some of the things I did appreciate, since they did cut out that subplot with the main romance. It was like a female driven movie in the like mid to late 90s where they didn't force a romance on her. She was just kind of more leading the plot. And there's also that the woman in the shuttle that was like kind of piloting everything, and she wasn't kind of reduced to like a "what are you doing here" type of like subplot of she was just kind of created as an equal. And then Morgan Freeman was the president, so like a black president. So I know there's like little small things, but I like that they like kind of was like progressive for the time. And this was directed by a woman, which I think is really
Yeah.
cool too. So it's not a perfect movie. It's like I said, really like choppy, and like there's a lot of like the Elijah Wood subplot. As much as I love him and Lily, like it is kind of cringeworthy in certain points. Like whenever
Yeah.
like some of the stuff they get into, I was just like, "What are
Well,
you
I was gonna
doing?"
say the thing that my husband and I were both like, yikes, is when he's like, you need to marry me or you'll die.
Pretty much, yeah,
And I'm like, wow, that's uh, I mean, words escape me. That's like to the next level of kind of fucked up. But it's a movie. It's a
yeah,
90s movie. Yeah, I am glad that we are getting this one 4K. I mean, it does have its fans. And this is the first time in the US anyways that it's been on 4K, so that's awesome. And I believe that all these features are new. I believe they're probably ported over from previous releases. So yeah, it looks really good though. I will say that being like a 90s movie, it actually like I don't know, some converts of 90s films tend to look a little muddy or a little bit like lackluster, but I have to say the range and definition of this film looks really nice. They did a really good job at the 4K, and it sounds great too. You want that big bombastic kind of like soundtrack. This delivers, I think. So yeah, it's a great release. The movie, your mileage may vary.
absolutely. It's the type of movie that every single like I watched this with my wife, and we were just kind of being like, "All right, this is gonna happen. This is gonna happen." Then it would happen. We're like, "Yeah, okay, that's fine." Like we just kind of knew we could guess it along the way, but we had fun with it. But it's not a perfect like disaster movie or
Yeah,
whatever. So
not a disaster of a disaster movie.
yeah, yeah. Moving on to my next title. This is bound to split our audience on what they feel about this movie. This is the new Disney and Marvel release of Ant-Man and the Wasp:
Mm.
Quantumania. So the latest from the MCU, especially since one of the stars is a shitbag. So uh, that was unfortunate. So got to watch this a couple days ago for the first time. You can see the 4K artwork there. Um, I I usually like the Ant-Man movies pretty well. They've kind of seem like to most people kind of be like B-level Marvel, but I've always had fun with it. Probably because I love Paul Rudd so much. But I usually like his little adventures because it doesn't seem as much of like tied to the bigger MCU as like pivotally. Like he can usually stand on his own and do his own thing. So with this one, I was interested because it was kind of making things bigger and like more grand and everything. And I'm mixed on the movie. I think it's not a terrible effort. I think I like it actually more than some of like other recent Marvel stuff like Thor, Love and Thunder, and probably even the maybe the latest Doctor Strange movie. But it's messy. It's kind of all so I Paul Rudd kind of like I love Paul Rudd, but he doesn't like really seem to be like a big presence in this. Like he's there, but they don't really do a lot with the Ant-Man character. They seem to kind of flesh out more of his family. Like his daughter Cassie is now grown up, and she's now played by Catherine Newton, and I really like her arc. And then like Hope Van Dyne, who plays played by Michelle Pfeiffer, I really like how she's given a lot more depth in this iteration, where you kind of learn more about her time in the quantum realm and them getting sucked back in and having to deal with the big baddies that are down there right now at the time. But I think the overall movie is fun. It's kind of like a Marvel's version. Like I know we have Guardians that are kind of like their version of a Star Wars movie, but it's kind of like their like Star Wars adventure, like different creature, like Dune-esque movie, but with visual effects that can be a little iffy or misguided. Like, have you seen this movie?
I've not.
Okay, there's the character of MODOK, the way they portray him in this movie. I like him whenever he has his like armor on, but whenever you see like the MODOK face that has been CGI'd, it like turns my stomach. I
I've
hate
seen stills
to
of
see.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful, and I'm just like, what were they thinking trying to like translate this MODOK look into live action like this? I think they could have done something a lot like not trying to have like Corey Stoll's face on this like this being is very unsettling. But then there's other parts that I really like when they're just kind of like visiting like a bar and you're seeing like all these species, like different kind of like quantum species that are down there and everything. And just, I don't know, it has like a fun sense of adventure I like, but it's very oddly paced. It has the Marvel bloat where this is a little over 2 hours, even though that's just with credits. Like before credits, like an hour 55, but still, I don't think it needs to be quite as long as it is. And there's some fun sequences, but then there's stuff that just doesn't work. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. Admittedly, Jonathan Majors does do a really good job as the villain role, but now that he is a real life villain, it kind of makes it an odd watch to like have to reckon with that. So it didn't like ruin the movie for me, but it's just kind of like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I wish this wasn't the case. So, but overall, the movie I think is good-ish. Like, it's not great, but it's like fine. I enjoyed it, but it's not my favorite MCU movie. Um, but yeah, it is what it is. But uh, this new 4K, it looks really nice. The like high dynamic range brings a lot of these like hues within the, like this realm to vivid life. You have like really deep colors, which are really nice. The Dolby Atmos audio is pretty solid. The Disney audio mixes are usually some of the weaker ones among the studios, and that's the case here, but it's not terrible. You just wish it had a little bit more power, like raw power behind it, but it's not as bad as some that I've listened to from the studio. And this has a pretty good selection of special features. This does have a commentary with the writer and the director, Peyton Reed, and the writer, Jeff Loveness, who they were like joking that it was his first screenplay. And I was just like, if this is true, that's really crazy that this is like big Marvel movie is their first. Like, who do you know that is like getting you these jobs? Anyway, but there's a couple other featurettes like about the cast and the villains and a gag reel and some deleted scenes, which the deleted scenes aren't even really new material. It's like scenes that you have in the film with maybe a couple extra lines of dialogue, but you see certain motion capture people like with unfinished special effects. So you see the motion like I can't remember. I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's like David Dastmalchian who plays a Polka Dot Man in Suicide Squad, the new one. You can see him like doing like the motion capture, so that's pretty cool. It's just kind of like an extra feature, but like don't expect like legit deleted scenes. It's just usually scenes you've already seen in the movie. But other than that, it's a fine release. It's not like bottom tier Marvel movie, but it's also not great. The MCU's just been kind of like on like coasting on like a mediocre path for like the last 4 or 5 movies. So I wish I could recapture that magic I used to feel when I'd see a new Marvel movie, but it hasn't come back around to me. It's just fine.
Yeah, I had to say, I think the last really fun Marvel movie was the latest Doctor Strange. I like that one a lot.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
got
I
that.
liked that one pretty well, but then there was issues that I had with it, so it's like once again a mixed bag for me.
um, so I have so my next couple titles are Warner Archive. Also, we got a new logo, which I think is kind of cool. It's like a refresh of the old one, but a lion in the streets, not a lion in the sheets, I guess. But
Well, this was probably during the code. You couldn't say "Lion in the Street."
Right. Did you get a chance to watch this yet?
I was actually watching it right before this record. I have like 10 minutes left to go, but yeah, I've
Okay.
seen most of it. Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
uh this is a crazy movie. It I really don't like comparing movies to other movies, but it kind of feels almost like, and you know, you can chime in on what you think, a precursor to A Face in the Crowd.
I haven't seen that movie, so I can't weigh in
Okay.
on that. Yeah.
Well, it's not that like one is very. I mean, it's similar in that they both are like men that are sort of hucksters, you know, like snake oil salesmen that sort of climb the political rungs and are ultimately their own undoing. So, you know, this is kind of where there's sort of that parallel. And you know, James Cagney really does a fantastic job at playing this sort of smooth talking peddler that is able to really use his charisma and charm to like get people on his side, and slowly that starts to corrupt him and corrode him into something pretty awful. And um this movie is it veers into camp, and you probably know the scene I'm talking about, but it's a courtroom scene where Cagney is literally holding up a dying man in this frantic frenzy, trying to like clear his name. There's, I mean, of course there's a lot of context and build up to this, but like it's such a wild, crazy, like just so over the top scene. I've never seen anything like it. So yeah, I don't know, it's pretty wild, but like I like James Cagney. I think he's somebody that can maybe be a little one note sometimes, but I think it really depends on like the material he's given, of course. Like Yankee Doodle Dandy, I think is maybe like my favorite of his films, and I think maybe his best performance. I think he's really good in this. I think the movie's very fast paced. I love all the character actors and contract players that pop up. Lon Chaney Jr., for example, is in this and is always great. And I kind of wish he was more in the movie, but you know, I'll just pop on the Wolfman sometime. But yeah, I don't know. It's good. It is a little bit hokey pokey at times. I feel like, you know, there's some plot threads that maybe could have used a little tightening, but I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. So I won't, you know, of course you didn't see the ending. I won't spoil the ending, but it's very appropriate, I'll say. I think that it looks really great. Again, Warner Archive has never really put out a bad product, in my opinion. And this is no exception. So this was from the year was this 53, and color film looks great. Again, Warner Archive always does a really nice job at like cleaning up the film. There's no scratches or artifacts. The color saturation is always on point. Nothing's like overblown. Everything's balanced very nicely. um this film is shot really well, so I think you really do get the most out of that like visual presentation. And it sounds good too. Not a lot of features. We do get like a fun cartoon short, which is nice, and a trailer. So you do get a little something extra. But yeah, if you're a fan of this movie, it's worth an upgrade. If you just like James Cagney, it's worth picking up. If you like weird court dramas, and you know, political machinations type kind of storylines, yes, A Lion in the Streets.
Yeah. Based on what you just described, for people who haven't seen this movie, no one would probably guess that like one of the most wild scenes in the movie involve some gators that
Oh
like
yeah.
that are about to like potentially devour a woman. So I'm just that scene. I was like losing my mind. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, this movie is just very strange, and I mean it's good. It's just it's one of those like you don't really hear too much about, but it's like one of those little anomalies. I mean, the 50s was such a great time for movies. I feel like it was probably, I mean, I don't, I'd have to Google what came out of that year, but I'm sure it probably got steamrolled by some other classics. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting movie for sure. Like fans of Cagney should definitely check it out. He is in rare form. He is just at an 11 most of the time. I'm dragging us back to the present. This is another brand new movie from Universal, and it is Champions with Woody Harrelson, which is a film that I was a little bit hesitant about just based on the subject matter because I didn't know how the filmmakers would handle it. But this is directed by Bobby Farrelly, who from like one half of the Farrelly brothers. Uh, and it's the story of Woody Harrelson is a like a kind of a disgraced basketball coach who gets into himself into a predicament where he's sentenced to community service, where he has to serve as a coach to this special needs basketball team. So it's basically Woody Harrelson's playing a coach. He's kind of like selfish and doesn't really want to do this like for these special needs like teens, like early 20s, like young adults. But he, of course, it's like a narrative where he like soon starts to soften and like realize like what like a great group of like kids these are and like how he can actually like genuinely impact their lives while he is like been like kind of notoriously trying to like further his own career. He kind of like starts to do like a reassessment of that type of it's your standard narrative, but it's I was concerned because it is Bobby Farrelly, but then like I remembered and I was like, didn't he have something to do with The Ringer with Johnny Knoxville, which on its surface is kind of like a icky movie, but once you like actually watch it, you can tell that there is like a genuine love for the special needs community, and that is kind of like doubled down here, where like all of the the buddies on the team, they are like played by real life like individuals that are like have these developmental disabilities, but they are like a really great group of performers. They all like put in like a really they all like kind of work together and they like have really great comedic timing with Woody. And there's also a lot of other like adult characters like Caitlin Olsen from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Cheech Marin. There's a lot of really great people in here, but it's this movie has such like a big heart, and you like it is handle sensitive. Like you do have like moments where the Woody Harrelson character he says something offensive, but it's like meant to be like showing that like, oh, he is not a like to the point of like being like enlightened and stuff, and he does have his moments of growth, but you don't even have to be subjected to that much like cringeworthy stuff. It's just maybe like a line, maybe two, where you're just like, ooh, but it's like, and everyone else is like, what the hell are you talking? Like, no, don't say that. Like, just shut up. So it handles the material pretty thoughtfully overall. It's a very predictable movie, but like if you're kind of in the mood for that kind of heartwarming, genuinely funny in a lot of places movie, it really gets the job done. The one complaint I will have about this is like this is basically the same running time as Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. So it's like 2 hours and 4 minutes. And I was just like, it does not need to be that long. And it starts to drag as you're leading up to like the final climactic game. Like it kind of, when all the characters like kind of reassessing where they are before the big finale, it just kind of like starts to like get a little aimless, and you're just like, this could be tightened up quite a bit. This should have been like an hour 45-minute movie tops. But despite that, despite some drawbacks, it's really solid movie. I was charmed by it. Woody Harrelson, he does a good job in this. All the performers do a good job. This comes with 12 deleted scenes. Some featurettes about Woody, about the buddies. There's a commentary track with Bobby Farrelly, and yeah, there's a pretty nice array of special features. You can really tell that this is like a cause that is near and dear to his heart. He wants to like portray this community in like the most uh, natural, like thoughtful light possible. And it's a really good time. So Champions, if you want kind of something heartwarming, it's a good one. So it's also on Peacock if you want to like try before you buy. And also there's a digital code that comes with that, which was not in there. So there you go.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I haven't seen it yet, so I was like super curious what you thought of it. So I might, like, as you say, maybe watch it on streaming and like a try before you buy. So I'm sticking with Warner Archive for my next two titles. And this is one that I've heard of, and I was really excited when I found out it was coming. It's a pre-code film called Safe in Hell, and it's a very attention-grabbing title.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, so did you get around to this seeing this yet?
Yes, I watched this last night. I think this is the last Warner Archive title I've seen of yours from this week. But yeah, I got to watch it last night.
So it is pretty saucy. I will say that I'll get into more detail obviously, but like this is definitely a movie that like could not have been made a couple years after this, or at least it would have to be heavily reworked.
Mm-hmm.
And this basically tells a story of a sex worker named Gilda, and she's wrongly convicted of killing her boyfriend, but I think he's like sort of coded as her pimp. She escapes to an island with other criminals, but there's a twist when she finds out that her boyfriend is not dead. Meanwhile, she starts a relationship with a more upstanding gentleman, and she kind of wants to go straight, and there's all these obstacles in her way to becoming like a quote unquote good girl and fit into society. So yeah, this movie definitely is very racy for the time. There's a little bit of like skin on display, which they definitely wouldn't have shown a few years later. There's some overt sexual innuendos. There's a really funny scene about wiggly worms that is not super subtle. You get what the underlying message is, but
Mm-hmm.
um this is just one of those really bleak, like almost bleak to the point of nihilistic. Like that ending, I won't spoil it for y'all, but that ending is just heart-wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really is like holy shit. Like, and I will say, as maybe overwrought as it was, I did find it impactful because you do really get to care for these characters. And I think that some movies like some movies this week, even I have hard time really connecting and engaging with that character, but I really firmly thought the filmmakers did a great job of like putting me on their side, and it just makes that ending so devastating but
Mm-hmm.
weirdly satisfying. Like I it's very bold. I mean, even you know, putting aside the pre-code stuff, I feel like post or like if this was made in the 40s, we probably would have had a much more upbeat kind of ending, or it would have worked out or something, because during the war we kind of had a little bit more lighter, a little more fluffier stuff, but and then post-war we got the more gritty noirish stuff. But anyways, yeah, this is it doesn't pull back any punches. It really just lets you have all of the dourness. And yeah, I mean, God, I felt so horrible for that character because she is just mercilessly berated by all the men. Like she is literally just like I don't even know how to describe it. It's such a horrifying feeling, and I'm like, it sucks to think that that's how women feel a lot of times. So anyways, yeah, it's really good though. I'm really impressed by how really nice this looks. This was from like 31 or 32, and you can again tell that a lot of pains were taken to make this look really nice. Again, um, really couldn't find any like scratches or artifacts or like um even the audio is very clear. I know like in the early 30s sometimes you have like a soundtrack that's a little bit more tinny or has some distortion, but this sounds really nice. So maybe they were just working with better equipment to begin with. But headline is sounds nice, looks nice. Again, I think this is a like the previous film, this is really nicely shot, and I think that this upgrade really lets you kind of like see all the really nice like sets and costumes. And yeah, it's a heavy one, it really is. But if you're into kind of something a little morose, if you want to ruin your day a little bit, check this out. But yeah, it is good, and we do have some features. I believe this was probably ported over. um I always kind of wish that we would get some like more film historian commentaries. I know we do get that sometimes with Warner Archive, but not a lot.
Mhm.
So that's something I would like to see more of. I know that's something like Kino and Criterion and Vinegar and Severin do. But I think that these have a lot of really interesting historical context, and I think that having a historian kind of lay that out would be helpful. But yeah, it's a really good release.
Absolutely. Yeah. I concur on pretty much everything you said. It can be a tough watch, but it's rewarding in the end. So definitely check it out if you're a fan of pre-code dramas, because it's pretty dark in places. Going back to another modern movie, I have one from Lionsgate, and this is Transfusion
Mm.
with Sam Worthington. And this is an Australian drama, which a lot of these more, this isn't like directly like direct to video, but it's kind of one of those Lionsgate movies that pops up like every couple weeks or so, where you're like, how much money was put into this? Where did this movie come from? I had actually heard of this movie before it was announced for Blu-ray, and it caught my eye mainly because like I always have to weigh like, do I want to even invest my time in this? And I decided I did because the creative team behind this, at least one of the creative figures behind this, is directly involved with a show that I love. It aired on FX. You can find it on Hulu, called Mr. In Between, which is an Australian kind of character-based crime show, which is really great. It's like a crime dark comedy kind of, but like definitely check that one out. But one of the creative figures from that wrote on this and is also a character within this. And while this kind of sets itself up to be almost like, whenever you read the description, you're like, oh, this is kind of like a Taken, but then you realize that it's like, once you watch it, it's not really. Sam Worthington plays a soldier who, I don't want to like spoil a lot, but there's like he has a young son and a wife, but then there's a tragedy at the beginning of the movie. And kind of like flashes forward, and it's just like Sam, it has like this teenage son who's kind of getting into all kinds of like he's starting to like run with a bad crowd. He is like always cutting school. Sam himself, he is kind of like wrestling with his place and his like his emotions and his place in the world and all kinds of stuff. So they're kind of like drifting apart. He's not being like the best dad he can be, all that type of stuff. So um you like the description as it reads says that like he has to, the like this dad has to protect his son from like a bad situation. So you think like, oh, he's going to get like kidnapped or something, and he's going to have to go in and use his army like precision to like get his kid back. It's not exactly that. It's more of a subtle kind of more character based drama, where it is this man who's kind of like suffering almost from like a form of PTSD, where he is like trying to get over grief. It like he has like this old army buddy who's asking him to, or giving him an opportunity to like commit some crimes for extra money to like try to just like get by basically, because no one will hire him because he has like kind of anger issues and all kinds of stuff. So there's like all this mixed within this narrative of just like this man trying to overcome grief and be a good dad. And the way this all kind of like blends together actually works really well. I was surprised by how good it was. I wouldn't say it's like A plus 5-star movie, but it's a really rock solid drama that I really quite enjoyed. And Sam Worthington, he puts on one of the better performances I've seen from him. I think early on in his career, I think he kind of got criticized for being a little bit wooden and like stuff like Clash of the Titans and stuff like that. But whenever he's given them some good material, and I haven't seen the latest Avatar, but I've heard a lot of people say that like that's one of his better performances as well. I think he's just an actor that like needed time to grow and like come into like his like talents, and he does a really good job in here. Like you feel for him, but there's also moments of like thrills and action and like gun play and all that stuff. But it's not like a John Wick or anything, so don't go in expecting that. But if you want a more subtle, like dramatic crime thriller, Transfusion is really solid. I really quite enjoyed it. It's worth checking out. It's one, if you just see this as like, oh, it's just another like direct to video Lionsgate movie. It's better than that. I'll promise you that. There's no special features, unfortunately. I would have liked to have heard this creator talk about this, but no special features. But the audio video is pristine. It's a new movie. It looks good. Sounds good. No problems with that. But overall, yeah, worth checking out. At least like if you can like find it streaming, check it out. You might want to buy it. I'd want to add it to my collection. I already have it, but yeah, it's a good movie.
Nice. No, that's awesome. Like that's definitely something not on my radar, but yeah, it sounds intriguing, and especially since um we both talk about some of these like direct to video stuff, and it's nice when you finally find one that's like actually refreshingly good or pretty decent. So
Yeah.
my final not my final title but my final Warner Archive title is One Way Passage. And oh boy, I think this actually could be let me know what you think, but I think these could actually be a really good double feature.
I haven't seen One Way Passage yet, so
Okay.
I'll have to wait in next week.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to report back when you see it. So
Okay.
but yeah, so I won't there is some stuff that I won't spoil because there is some like interesting kind of twists. But yeah, this is essentially another sort of doomed romance film. And I will say that it's not, well, it is bleak. I was gonna say it's not as bleak as Safe in Hell, but there definitely is some like heavy subject matter. The plot revolves around two people that kind of meet by chance. One is a criminal played by William Powell, and then the other one is a lady who is essentially going home to die. She's has a terminal illness, and they meet, they fall in love. They both are hiding their secrets. Like William Powell is sort of humorously chained to this kind of bumbling cop, and he convinces him to like essentially let him kind of roam around the ship uncuffed. So there's sort of this like ruse going on between the two of them, and it is a very much like you're watching a sinking ship. It's like they're, you know, this isn't going to turn out well for either one of them. Um but then you have like stuff like there's this really awful like comic relief guy in this movie that sort of ruins it. Like it's so over the top vaudevillian that like it just doesn't match the tone of the film. So it sort of I mean, you know, I know you watch a lot of old movies and you can tell when they're like, okay, we need to lighten the mood a little bit, even though it doesn't really call for that. There's some excellent horror movies that I think kind of almost not completely ruined, but are a little bit ruined by this forced comic relief. Like I can think of the Lugosi Black Cat, which has
Okay.
some obnoxious humor that just takes me out of the tone of the film. But anyways, yeah, it's overall really good. Um, it was like wild how often they would, so the couple would have this ritual where they would like take a drink together and then they would break the champagne glasses, and I'm like, that poor bartender that has to keep replacing these glasses for these
Yeah.
like assholes. But um, so I really like the actors. Kate Francis is fantastic. Very underrated, I think. William Powell is great. I I hate to say this, but it's like him and Myrtle Loy were such a great combo
Mhm.
that like you almost sort of like wish that it had been her instead, even though I like that actor. But you can really tell when, you know, that just undeniable chemistry, and when you don't have that one person there, it's
Mhm.
almost like doesn't ruin it, but I'm like, oh man, it would have been so much better with her in it. But anyways, yeah, it's really a fascinating, interesting film. Again, tonally it's a little bit wonky. It's only 67 minutes, so the pace is like breakneck. And yeah, I like that it sort of revels in this sort of fatalistic, doomed kind of romance, even though it kind of gives you a little bit of a glimmer of hope at the end. So not as maybe bad as Safe in Hell as far as like a really oppressive film. So yeah, looks really good. Again, I sound like a broken record, but it's a black and white film, but everything is handled really nicely. No artifacts, scratches. The contrast between the black and white's really nicely handled. Sounds good. This was another pre-code film. Um, I believe it was about the same year as 32, so I think it was same year as Safe in Hell. And yeah, it's really good. It's definitely not as like risque as the other film, but yeah, it's really good. I believe it won best screenplay for that year as well at the Oscars. So
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, whenever we start talking about Warner Archive, like on a consistent basis, it comes up. It's hard to come up with new ways to be like, this is virtual perfection. So I
yeah,
understand. Like sometimes you just got to sound like a broken record. Sometimes.
it's so nice when I get excited for these titles because like they're really great movies, but also like I know what I'm consistently getting something like a really great product. It's not like Mill Creek where sometimes you get a really good one and sometimes you don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We've all been there. Moving on to my next title, I'm going to the land of television. This kind of complements something that you spoke about last week whenever you did the Star Trek Next Gen 4K collection. I am heading to the world of Star Trek in Star Trek Lower Deck Season 3, which I haven't had a chance to discuss this series on the show before. I would just say this latest season has moved to more of a manufactured on demand model for their Blu-ray releases. So if you want a pressed disc, I would get this sooner rather than later. These are pressed, but in future like pressings, they might end up being a burn disc. So just be aware of that. You probably won't find a Blu-ray in general retail stores, just probably the DVD. But I of course have to go Blu-ray because I I gotta have stuff in high definition. Um, but so yeah, this series, I'm not going to go too much into like the narrative of this third season. I just kind of want to give a little bit of background about the show a little bit more, just to say that whenever I first approached this show, I was just like, okay, that's a new animated show. This is going to kind of maybe it. I kind of had like a look that kind of looked like Rick and Morty. I was like, okay, this is going to be just like kind of a silly, like kind of like maybe like occasionally like filthy take on Star Trek, like just humorous and fun. And it's not exactly that. It's very humorous, but what I really love about this show is that it's very, very respectful of Star Trek lore. From like, I'm not the biggest like Trek fan in the world. Like, I love them, but like, I haven't been like conventions, and I can't recall certain episodes off the top of my head and stuff. But from what I've read from like online communities, I think this appears to like have the most like love and affection for the franchise at large, and the way it integrates like lore from the past without trying to like change things dramatically or like feel like it needs to reinvent stuff. This is just kind of like back to basic Star Trek, where yes, it's focused on kind of like it's kind of situationed as like a workplace sitcom where it's like everyone who works in the lower decks of these like this ship that you don't get to see, not the cool heroes and stuff. It's like it's the other guys like type of situation, like what they kind of get into and like their relationship with some of the other like captains on deck and everything. And like it's just fun to see these characters go throughout this world, and like they're not like the science that they are trying to tackle is not like reinventing the wheel or anything. It's just kind of like back to basic science where it's not trying to create big like action set pieces. It's very character based and like very humanistic, which is what I think is what Gene Roddenberry wanted from the original Star Trek. He wasn't trying to create like a space battle every week. He was wanting to kind of like have that kind of like philosophical approach to story, and like this was like supposed to be like a utopia where there wasn't these big conflicts and all that kind of type of stuff. And this kind of embraces that whole ethos really well. And I really like how these characters, like they do have issues, but like there's like a great love for one another, and like just the way they like kind of progress as the series goes along. It's really great. And yes, there are a ton of Easter eggs for fans as well. There's like they'll reference like something that was maybe like on one episode of like a random like next gen episode like in season 4 or something, and it'll just like bring it back and create like a whole storyline out of it, which is really cool. Or like just the different places that they go to throughout this series is just so great. And with this season in particular, what I really like is there's always been a little bit of like a serial nature to these, like a ongoing storyline, but this season does kind of like provide more of a firm story for like certain, like there's a character arc throughout the season, and like throughout the series, like the like characters that you meet on like episode 1 season 1 are way different than you have at the end of this season. And there's like dramatic stakes though, and there's really great storytelling, but it's also very funny. And it's having fun with Star Trek, but it's not making fun of Star Trek. It knows what fans will like embrace and like laugh at like knowingly, but not like being like this is stupid, like that type of thing. It's very like loving, which it's great. So the third season of Lower Decks was really great. This Blu-ray, it comes with a pretty good array of special features. There's some commentary tracks. There's some like this thing called Lower Dictionary. So it's a dictionary that kind of like gives you some insights into some like the deeper Star Trek lore that you might need to look a little bit of help with. There's some like different featurettes about the series as a whole. And it's just kind of like looking at like what this season and how it fits into the Lower Decks canon. It's just a really solid release from Paramount and CBS. So if you're a Star Trek fan and you haven't like checked this out because it's like, oh, it's animated.
What would this be? I have no idea. It is generating power. One of the settings on this weapon was a total conversion beam. We saw it. Tell us how to find it.
Twist my widdershins until you reach the null position.
Most peculiar.
For all the people who are complaining about like Discovery or Picard or anything, like check out Lower Decks. Like it's like
Yeah.
giving you the Star Trek that you want from like the past. Like it's giving you what you want, and it's like very respectful, very talented voice cast. It's just a really awesome show, and I'm glad they're continuing to release it on Blu-ray and loose in some form. Even though I wish like we weren't getting to like that danger zone of like, is it even going to be released on Blu-ray? So I'm not a fan of that, but hopefully they'll continue.
Yeah, and this is a series that I've actually just started watching.
Cool.
And yeah, and I do think that I will add, I concur on everything you said. It's really great. It's funny. It's funny without, like you said, winking at the audience or being disrespectful to the source. And I definitely also add, I think it's a good starter place, even. I mean, I know you wouldn't like if you're new to Star Trek and there's so much of it, it's overwhelming. But I think even if you don't get all the references and Easter eggs, there's still like it never makes you feel alienated. Like you can pick up things from context. So
Absolutely. Yes.
so my next two titles. So we are getting into the silent hour of the portion of the
Yeah. Bringing back the silent corner. Let's do it.
I'm really excited. Kino Classics has, well, generally just always kills it, right? But I'm really excited because they're doing the Ernst Lubitsch collection. This is something that they've started, and we got two more, and I believe next month we're getting another one. And I'm blanking on the title. It's like the dolls or something.
I'll look it up while
No. The Oyster Princess. Sorry.
you-
That's yeah. These so I'm gonna to go through these pretty quickly, but I think they're really, really worth checking out. The first one is the Wildcat. I also want to bring your attention to the fact that there is another film on here as a nice bonus. This film isn't super long, so I like that added value that they give you. And there is some historical audio commentary tracks, which is great. I found those very helpful in my second viewing because there is a lot of historical context that helps you sort of appreciate things a little bit more. But yeah, so Ernst Lubitsch is, of course, known for his sophisticated bedroom dramas and witty comedies that largely center around class. And so we have a pair of German silent films that very much, I would say, both of these are like the blueprint for like Hollywood Ernst Lubitsch. So the Wildcat is a wacky farce. I think that's the best way to describe it. It acts as a nice satire on politics and, of course, class. Again, these themings are something that Lubitsch would become world famous for. It is very zany, yet you really can see, especially in Wildcat, where there's a level of detail and polish to it that is remarkable. Like just in the sets and the costumes, and just how things build and go to this crazy crescendo at the end, which is just all out madness, and I love it. As for the plot itself, it's fine. I think it's a little bit better than the next title that I'm going to be talking about, but um, it is a little bit sometimes hard to firmly engage with. And again, I think this is something that, you know, when Lubitsch was paired with some other like writers in Hollywood, you know, he was able to sort of like streamline some of his plotting. But yeah, it's really good. So this is from 1921. So this is over 100 years. And no, does it? I mean, it does not look perfect. You're never going to get a silent film that looks beautiful and pristine, but I will say they did a heck of a good job of making it look fantastic, as best as it probably ever will be. You do see some damages, you do see like it isn't perfect, but again, these are like 100+ year old movies, and a lot, I mean, movie buffs will know that unfortunately a lot of silent films are just lost to time. So the fact that these were, you know, these survived and they look as good as they do is really awesome. So the Wildcat, pretty good, not great. My next title is Summerun, or
Let's go with that.
yeah. But anyways, so yeah, this stars the same actress, and Polio, I don't want to butcher her last name, but you get the gist. So yeah, it is another very farcical kind of comedy. This one is more, I would say, like fantasy, or like maybe like sort of like an Arabian Nights kind of setting. And there definitely is some cringe. There is some things that are like have not aged very well. I mean, given the setting of the Arabian Nights, it's probably pretty clear that there's some, you know, some ethnic things that are not great or hasn't aged very well. But yeah, you do see that kind of polish of Lubitsch at work here. I think that the plot isn't as engaging as the Wildcat, but I was fairly entertained. It's a little bit more of a breezy kind of adventure film. It does have that kind of social class aspect that Ernst Lubitsch was sort of known for. You know, there is some like political satire woven out throughout. Yeah, it's a really good one. Again, this one is I believe, no, so this is 1920. And it also looks, again, exceptionally well for the time. Again, not perfect, but when you consider the fact that this movie survived at all, it's impressive. So we don't get a commentary track on this, unfortunately, but we do have some test footage, which I think is really interesting. Again, I think that it's great that stuff like this is archived and then put out for the masses. Both of these, I feel like film fans should certainly have on their shelves. I'm excited for more Ernst Lubitsch stuff coming up in the future. Like I said, the Oyster Princess, I believe, is coming out in the next month or two. So look out for that if you're a fan. And we'll be definitely covering those. But yes, both very much worth picking up.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to like getting more into my Lubitsch collection. So excited about those. Moving on to one from Film Movement Classics. This is Samurai Wolf 1 and 2, which is Samurai 2 Hellcut. So some classic samurai action. These are both films on one disc. This comes with, I'll just pop out this disc so you can kind of see the interior artwork here. This comes with a booklet, which I'm trying to balance this. Nope. So booklet here. So got some writing and stills and all kinds of good stuff here. So yeah, these two films, they feature like the same main character, and they're not terribly different from one another. But they do have their differences, kind of stylistically at times. Samurai Wolf, it's kind of your basic like the titular character, who calls himself Wolf. He's like kind of like wandering throughout the land, and he comes across like this like postal station stop, and you learn of like these bandits who rob them, and like it's like a whole like there's bandits in the village, but like these villagers need help protecting themselves, and that kind of like classic setup. And like there's like an upcoming shipment of like gold that's like very valuable, that if it gets stolen, they're like it's gonna like basically put this town under from like because they're gonna have to pay it back to the people who they're shipping it for. So of course this samurai, he comes along, like he's hired on to like help protect them and stuff. And while that's a pretty standard plot, it kind of evolves into like some interesting elements where there's like the woman who's kind of like helping run this place, like she's like in like this unfulfilled romance with like an outsider who's like kind of involved with the gang and stuff. So it's like this samurai gets in the middle of this like complex love relationship as well. But overall, it's a pretty solid movie. Whereas the second one, it finds him like kind of in a similar situation where he's like roaming throughout the country, and he comes across another situation that he has to help with regarding bandits and like saving people and all kinds of stuff. So it's basically similar plots, but it's just like samurai doing noble samurai stuff. But what kind of elevates this a little bit more is the direction from Hideo Gosha, I'll say. We'll take a shot at that. Some of the directorial flourishes are interesting, and the way he uses movie or music, or the absence of sound or music, is really interesting. The way like in the first film, it starts off with a lot of like whenever there's violence, it'll be like in slow motion, and a lot of times it'll just like go completely silent like while the slow motion is happening. But then as the plot progresses, sometimes like these visuals like are sped up, or there's like different angles, and just the way it's not just like a cut and paste like framing or anything like that, or stylistic choices. And it's stuff like the cinematography is used very deliberately, which I really appreciate. And so yeah, these films are not reinventing the wheel, but if you like samurai films, they're very entertaining. They're pretty violent, but most people who like samurai movies will appreciate that. And yeah, this release is pretty great as well. These come from new 2K restorations. They are both, like I said, they're both on one disc, but there's not like a large issue with like compression artifacts, because they're both pretty short. They're both around an hour and a half long. There's still some like nicks and scratches here and there, but you can tell there's been like a really good restoration. They're both in black and white, so there's really good contrast. There's like pretty firm black levels. The highlights are not blooming. It's a really solid presentation. There's an audio commentary track for the first movie. There's also a 16-minute featurette on the director as included as well. And then there's, like I said, the book that I showed off with some essays. So overall, it's a really solid package. You get two movies in one shelf-friendly packaging. So I'm not complaining. I think fans will be happy, and Film Movement Classics did a really good job on this. So buy with confidence if you're a fan of samurai films.
Nice. That sounds really interesting. You had me at samurai, so I'm definitely into it. My next title is Secret Defense. And you had covered Up Down Fragile last week. And yes, so the coming of this was foretold. And I know we have talked about how this director is definitely not he likes to take his time on things.
Yes.
So this one is no exception. It's almost 3 hours long, and oh boy, it does not need to be a fraction of that. We'll get into it. I know I've read a lot of like other like takes on this film where people think this is like a low-key masterpiece, and that's fine if that's you're into it. But yeah, it's just very long and kind of a chore to get through. It's something where if I have a hard time connecting with the plot, or if I'm not connecting with the characters, in this instance it's sort of both, where it does pick up but it's well into the hour mark until like things really start ramping up, because it's very just long expositions. Like there's just scenes of her making tea, or like things she's on the train, and I'm like, come on, there's things called editing to
It sounds about right. Like this sounds familiar.
yeah, it's like, okay. I will say, so what was really interesting was, so my husband is a scientist, he's a chemist. So the lead actor is playing a scientist, and they're doing like DNA work. And so I was like, hey, like he was playing Minecraft, and I made him stop what he was doing and check it out, because I was curious, and I wanted to let y'all know if this was scientifically accurate. And he's like, yeah, all that equipment is right, what they're doing. Like there's even like a formula recipe for like the gel that they were making to do this like genotyping. He's like, that's the formula they would use to mix that up, and all that equipment is right. So I'm like, this seems pretty accurate. Like somebody like consulted on this, and um so I thought that was cool. I like that. I thought it was neat that like we love watching these movies where like when they're sciencing, they have like blue liquid, red liquid. Like he's like, what even is that? We like to have fun with that, but very accurate. So I appreciate that aspect of it. But it's just very aloof. It's very just cold. It if you're looking for like a tense thriller, it does get into that, and I don't want to spoil it because there are some pretty decent twists and some reveals. It does try to give you some emotional weight to it, but I just felt so checked out that I had a hard time, getting that full weight of that emotional impact. But it's fine. It looks really good. Again, it doesn't say if this is a 2 or 4K scan, but I would say it looks really nice. This is
Check the
from
front. It usually says about under the title on these.
Oh
releases.
yeah, right. Yeah,
No, I've had that issue on some of his releases as well. I'm just like, oh, it's right here.
yeah.
So.
But yeah. So yeah, I would have also totally guessed like a 4K because it looks really nice. It's a late 90s movie. You do have a little bit of softness, but overall it's a really nice clarity, and skin tones look really nice and natural. I will say, as much as I didn't connect with this film, it is very well shot. There's a level of detail that is staggering in these films, but it's just, I have a hard time because it's so slow, and it's so like methodical, and reading some other people's sort of opinions on this film, that's kind of what they like. But I don't get it.
Yeah, I'll have to, I haven't checked this one out yet. I have to carve out 3 hours, so probably this weekend. But I'll have to tell you how representative I feel it is of Rivette's work. Maybe he's just not for you, which would, it makes sense. But
Yeah.
like, he's not for everyone. He's a very patient direct. Like, it takes a very patient personality to like get through his work sometimes. So viewer beware for some of these. My next title is one that I know you've been anticipating to hear my thoughts. So let's just get into it. This is from RLJE Films. This is the Children of the Corn remake here from this year, which I believe has probably been done for a few years, but it just finally has come out. This is from, I will pronounce the director's name, Kurt Wimmer, because it's Wimmer, who I believe, if I read correctly, his last film was 2006's Ultraviolet, which was not very well reviewed. It had Mila Jovovich. It was kind of like a notorious bomb, but he's back and he's trying to update Children of the Corn. So before I get into it, I just have to give kind of my background. I have not read the source material, and shamefully, I have not seen the original Children of the Corn. Yes, I know. I bought it like a month ago from Hamilton Books. They had like the 4K on sale from Arrow Video, and I was just like, okay, now's the time to get it. But I did not have time to catch it before I got this one. So I'm not sure what's supposed to be in the story and what is not supposed to be in the story. So you might have to give me some guidance. I'll try not to spoil things too much. So basically the plot of this, as I saw it in this, is just about like kind of a dying town where like there's like an orphanage here, and then like farmers who have like all these cornfields that are dying, and they are kind of given the opportunity to bury their like cornfields. I think probably for like in exchange for some like development, and they'll like get paid off for their cornfields. But like all the children in the town feel like they don't have like a voice like for their future, because it's going to impact them in the future, and they kind of like they are kind of like expressing their dismay over like the corn being like covered over. And then there's like kind of like a mystical element to the corn, and like this is all kind of led by this one central girl who seems to have a connection to whatever entity might be within the corn or is driving her or whatever. But this kind of like leads into just like murder and mayhem and all this type of stuff. These kids just kind of turn like evil and start killing a lot of the adults. But this movie is bad, I guess. Like, it's not good, I know that, but there are things that I'm like, this is kind of interesting, but then it's also kind of like stupid and like weird. And there's like, I really like the young girl who's kind of playing the like malevolent catalyst for all this, like who's like ordering people to like kill people and like create this chaos, and who seems to be the one that's in connection with the corn and like all the mysticism. She does a really good job. Some of the other characters in the this movie are not good. Like whenever I talked about the like children wanting a vote on like how the town's future goes, there's like this insane like choice by integrating this one like caricature of a man who's like making fun of like this young girl for wanting a voice. So he's like, "Oh, little girl, you want to vote? Like, you get out of here!" Like that kind of like weird like caricature. I was just like, "What choice is this? This is bizarre." But then there's also some like deaths that are fairly interesting, but like they're not always like the most like well framed or shot or anything. I felt like they could have been captured in a more interesting way rather than just dispatching of someone. One of my like better sequences involves like someone potentially going to be like hung by their neck. They're like dangling on like a tractor, and like if the tractor gets pulled out, they'll like hang and all this stuff. It's one of the more interesting sequences in the movie, and then there's interesting moments. It's just like a very mixed bag. It's a very mixed bag. But then the way this ends, I have to wonder. It seems right for Stephen King, but then I can't imagine it happening in the 80s, where it goes into almost like I won't spoil it, but it's like more of a creature feature type of situation where there's like an actual entity in the corn. But like it turns into, it's just like a CGI mess of like craziness. I can imagine, like, knowing what I know about like it, where it turns into like a spider and like all kinds of stuff. Like I know Stephen King can get a little out there. I don't know. I was expecting more like Omen type, like demonic stuff, not like a corn creature. So I don't know what was going on. But it's not good. If you like the original, you probably won't like this one. It's probably not respectful. I don't know, but it just kind of seems kind of low rent. If I knew that it wasn't like Children of the Corn, if it was just like a horror movie I checked out, I probably wouldn't like think too much. I'd be like, it's dumb, but there was interesting moments. And so that's kind of how I feel about it. Like it's dumb, but some things are kind of weirdly interesting, but like not so much that I would really recommend anyone seek it out. If you see it on Shudder, give it a watch, check it out. But otherwise, be cautious because I wouldn't rush out to buy it day one as a blind buy.
Yeah. So I'm like by no means an expert. I read the short story, but it was like I think I was in high school. So it's been a few years. But I will say, without spoiling anything, I feel like it does sound very different. Like I don't believe I recall them going into super detail about the town and the sort of low-key political and social sort of aspects of it. I think they're a little bit more vague about that. And I do believe that the like corn demon is more vague, or it's almost like Lovecraftian kind of,
Yeah.
if I'm remembering that correctly. We should do, maybe we'll save it for October. We'll do a Children of the Corn episode if you all want that. Chime in. I have a soft spot for the 80s film. It is not good. I'll fully admit it. It's not, it has a lot of issues, but there's a level of charm that I think helps sort of like get over some of the like wonkier maybe plotting. I have a Children of the Corn DVD that's signed by the cast. And that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I grew up in the sticks. We actually had a cornfield. So I don't know. That's like super nostalgic for me. So that's why I was like really excited when I saw that you were reviewing that, and I might check it out. I mean, it might be one of those I'll check it out on Shudder, and yeah, probably will be good for me.
Yeah.
But so my final title, I wanted to end on a more positive note than the last film. And I always have these discoveries that I really like. It gets me excited about like kind of blind picking some of these. I haven't heard of this, but it looked and sounded really interesting, and that's Let It Be Morning. And I do really want to check out this director's other work now. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I did too. So I will say that so first, just to give you a little summary, this tells the story of a man and his wife. They're returning to his home, which is his little village, for a wedding. They find themselves stuck after a military blockade, and things just kind of go very south from there. So this is a very darkly funny, yet at times very bleak and horrifying. Yeah, this movie is very slow, but I will say that I think the pace feels a little bit more methodical and well thought out versus Secret Defense. While I there is a lot of just people in a room standing around, sitting around. It really helps you give a rich sense of the family dynamic and these people. And it is a comedy, even though the comedy is very dry and very sardonic. And if you're, I think a lot of people might find off-putting is the pace, yes, but also, like, again, the humor is very wry, and it's not like slapsticky kind of comedy. It's just sort of like darkly funny in some of these like moments that are very much not funny. Like, this is like the situation is scary and horrifying, but it finds sort of comfort in this uncomfortable humor, which I really appreciate. And that's not, I mean, that's not something easy to really pull off. And I think the real glue here is some really compelling performances, and just the detail in direction, cinematography. Gosh, this movie is so beautiful to look at. I mean, even just some of these like small moments that are just captured so beautifully, and it really gives you a snapshot of this life, even though just some of the things are just so weird or absurd. Yeah, I liked it. I really thought it was interesting. Again, I think the other barrier for people might be if you're not super familiar with the culture that it's talking about. It's a little daunting. I don't know how you felt, but I know, like, I got all of it from like context clues and stuff. But if you're not really developed into that sort of culture, you do kind of feel like you're scrambling to, you know, process everything, and that's fine. I mean, not every film should be Westernly centric. This doesn't always have to speak to a massively wide audience. But I think I didn't feel too alienated because the emotions, the plot, everything is so universal, that I was able to really connect with it still.
Yeah, that one I watched it probably about a month ago, but I still has stuck with me, just like certain moments that are they're very tense, even though like they're very low key. Like there's a couple scenes where like the characters are like approaching like a guard at the border, and just like kind of how those situations play out, and like you get so tense, and you just like, I don't know, even like if it's only like two or three people on screen, you're just like gripping your seat, like how is this going to turn out? And then like certain character choices, you're just like, what is going on? And like, I don't know, just like, yeah, there are some like darkly funny or whatever moments, but then there's a lot of like really like gripping moments, and like just like the way they handle the tonal shift, I think is done very well. So yeah, that's a really good movie, and I highly recommend anyone who likes international cinema for sure.
Yeah, I also found it super jarring when they would like blast some American music.
Yes, that's
Um,
actually one of my favorite. Just like when the dude is just like kind of
uh,
chilling out, and then he gets confronted about it, and I'm just like, ooh.
which I like. I really like his character. He's like kind of dopey, but he's like sort of what this movie needs to sort of balance out, um, some of the more, again, some more heavy or intense stuff. Yeah, I'm do you recall if this director has anything else on Blu-ray or
I'm actually not sure. I can't remember. I don't think this was a debut, but it's possible I'm wrong. This might have been, but I don't know. I definitely someone to keep an eye out in the future
yeah.
for sure.
And I'll do a better job of pre-planning this, and I'll if there are some other films and y'all are interested, I can include that in the other films list.
تروح يسلينا اي اتوبيس بيوصل بيت تكفى.
بيت تكفى. No Arab Culture Center.
Not culture, not Israeli culture, not Arab, not culture at all.
Jahannam.
My final title, not ending on as positive of a note, but it's not terrible. This is a series from HBO and Warner Brothers. This is And Just Like That, season 1, which is the sequel series to Sex and the City, which is a show that I actually really liked. I finally finished it up last year after, I believe it's, I don't know, time's weird, maybe it's 2 years ago. Whenever the complete series came out, which I reviewed on the website, I finally finished up that series with my wife, and it was a pretty fun viewing experience. I grew to really like those characters and stuff, so I approached this this sequel series with a little bit of hesitation. One, knowing that Kim Cattrall wasn't involved as Samantha anymore, like her character. She's not like killed off or anything. She's just kind of like referred to like living somewhere else. And you do get like some of the best moments of this season is actually just like seeing her like texts and stuff, like Carrie texting her and like getting a response, and you're just like, oh, that's actually like the idea of Kim Cattrall shouldn't be one of the better parts of this series. But as a sequel series, it's kind of disappointing. But there are moments that I quite like, because just spending time with these characters that I really like is fun. But what they tend to do with them and how they're written isn't always my favorite. So it's mainly down to like the 3 characters now. So Carrie, Charlotte, and Miranda. And I don't want to like spoil a lot of, or anything pretty much in this series, but like within the first couple episodes, there's a very big shift for one of the characters, and that kind of like puts them on a new path. And all of them are kind of like on their own like different shifts. Like one is having like some marital issues. Others are having like raising young daughters and dealing with that. What I find the biggest problem to be with this series is they seem to like, I want to make this perfectly clear. I love progressive shows. I love like a progressive viewpoint. I'm not someone who's like, oh, they don't need to go woke or anything. But this series, they seem to be like going like off of a checklist of like what they need to like be advocating for or like addressing. And I'm like, you don't have to like address every societal issue within your show, Sex and the City / And Just Like That. You don't need to be doing this. Like, yes, like one of the main criticisms of the original series is there's not a lot of Black people or people of color. But so they do include several more Black characters in this season, which is great. But then you also have like a non-binary podcast host that Carrie speaks with, but then also like one of Charlotte's daughters is like trans, and then there's also like there's like a lot of different like societal issues like this. I'm like, this doesn't seem like natural to this particular world. Like not that like there shouldn't be this representation on screen. I'm very happy that these characters are on there. I just think it's just like that mixed with like some Black Lives Matter stuff and some other things that like I won't name every societal issue, but there's like a lot of like societal issues. I'm just like, you don't need to be doing so much. Like you need to make this like a naturally progressing show rather than just like giving each person like, here's your societal issue that you're dealing with. Here's your societal, like, it's a lot. Because it's like, it's very blunt. It's not handled with like nuance. It's just kind of like, here's my issue. This is why it's like, but I'm like, you're not even really dealing with the characters that we know and love. Like they can be confronting probably some of their past problematic behavior from the writing from the original series, but they're not just doing that. They're trying to cram everything into this one series. And it doesn't make for like a cohesive viewing experience. While I still really like these characters and hanging out with them, some of the like episodes can be really bogged down and just not as fulfilling as I think they could be. I think they ordered a second season. Hopefully they can kind of find that balance a little bit more in the second season. But overall, this first season, it was just a disappointment for me for the most part, just because I did love Sex and the City so much, flaws and all. But this one just kind of like seemed to be like course correcting to like an unnatural degree for these characters. But it's good to hang out with them. The writers, they're just like way heavy handed, and they just need to just find that balance a little bit more. There's no special features on this release. And also, like I said, I reviewed the complete series Blu-ray release, which is great. This is DVD only. I do not know why they would have the original series on Blu-ray and then they bring out this new series and it's just DVD only. It drives me crazy that they're not matching. And like this is newly filmed, beautiful, and like HBO Max HD. Just put it on Blu-ray. Give the fans a Blu-ray disc. That being said, with like HBO and stuff being what it is, you never know what's going to disappear. We're now getting Max. Who knows what's going to be falling off from there or whatever. So I do have it if I need to watch it, but I'm glad to have the security of DVD. But it's just, I wish this was on Blu-ray. I don't understand why it's not. It seems like it'd be a popular series, whatever. But yeah, if you want to own it, it still looks good. It's like a new DVD, so it's like pretty solid quality. I just wish it was on Blu-ray, but if you like standard DVD quality, it's like top notch of DVD. It's just like I want Blu-ray, but looks decent, sounds good, just not what I wanted. And the series as a whole isn't what I wanted, but there's moments, and I like it in spite of itself.
Yeah, it sounds like Velma syndrome, where it is very much the way you're describing is very much like heavy-handed, but like not, it doesn't feel organic to the series or the storyline.
Yeah, and like I said, I really don't want it to come across as like there shouldn't be dealing with this storyline. We don't need these people in this series. Like it's not that. It's not that at all. It's just like how it actually relates to these characters and if it feels like they would actually be dealing with these on a natural level is what I have a problem with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, like you said, hopefully it'll get a little bit better in the next season. But yeah, I think that kind of does it for our yeah.
Let's jump out of that.
But no, it's yeah, it to your point though, it sucks that you don't have consistency with like series on Blu-ray. This is not on Blu-ray, but you know, maybe when they wrap this series, they'll do a Blu-ray complete series. Maybe. But yeah, it's just good to have stuff on physical media, especially since we don't really know what's going on with Max. It's so weird saying Max, just Max, because that's the name of my dog. So
yeah. Yeah. What's going on with Max?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes it's like nearly as frustrating as Dog Max, but yeah. Anyways, as always, this was fun. I really like how we can just get into a whole wide range of crazy stuff. And I guess this is the obligatory give this a like, comment, chime in. We'd love to hear from you all. And it's been nice that this seems like this is finding a little bit of a consistent audience. So if you're a regular, thank you so much. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us.